Increase prices. If it doesn't work, you can always go back. If it does work, then you make more money.
But I'm just thinking through that psychologically for that business owner, because they're going to struggle with that. You say to go ahead and try it because you can always go back.
And you don't have to increase prices for all your customers. You may elect to increase prices to, I don't know, to whatever customer comes in on Thursday, right?
Or new customers, and leave existing customers at the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then also new customers, you don't have to give the new price to all the customers, right? Whoever buys on Thursday get a newer price, and you see, is your sales volume the same this Thursday as last Thursday, or did it go up or down? And maybe it went down a little bit, but your margin went up.
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to another episode of Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, and we are excited to have you with us today, joining the Spartan Leadership. If this is your first time, welcome. We're excited to have you tune in and listen in on some great leader-to-leader conversations. This is your reminder for longtime listeners to please share these episodes. Like, subscribe, review us, and I would be of interest to know what you're learning and taking away from these great guests. And today, very much excited to have Per Sjöfors with us. This is an exceptional guest. We have not had anyone like Per on the show before. So when shout out to Steve for connecting us. When he introduced us, I was like, I have not had someone with this expertise on the show. So I'm excited to share Per's expertise with all of you today. He is originally from Sweden, joining us from LA, and a globally recognized expert in pricing strategies, and the founder of Sjöfors and Partners. Known as the Price Whisperer, Per has dedicated his career to helping companies optimize their pricing and boost their profitability, which is what we're all striving for in the business world. So Per, welcome to the show, my friend.
Josh, it's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. And even more, I'm looking forward to sort of shed some light on why pricing is important and add some value to the audience.
Absolutely. Well, we're excited to have you and your expertise because this is a very important topic for all businesses. So let's start a little bit from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you became the expert in pricing strategies.
It started with that I ran a couple of companies in Europe, one out of Zurich in Switzerland and one out of London in the UK. Before I moved here to the US, and I came here to establish and run a division of a fairly large public company. And then I had another 4 CEO jobs after that. We did experiments with pricing only because I was interested in the topic, right? And some of those experiments were very successful, meaning that next quarter revenues are up like 25%. Others were complete disasters, right? And what I had learned in business school about pricing was so academic and theoretical that it didn't help us to really understand why some experiments worked and some didn't, right? So when it was time for me to set out on my own, I decided let's figure out a process to make every pricing experiment a success. And that's essentially the process we use today still, you know, and it is based on a realization that everything you do in your company affects how you can set your prices. And I realized that in these experiments we had done, the reason why some worked and most of them failed was that we looked at pricing as would it live in a vacuum. And pricing never lives in a vacuum. You know, pricing is a result of what you do in your company, right? So I developed a process that it really goes out. It's pricing research, so it goes out in a company's marketplace, and it measures what they are willing to pay for a product or a service. And that can be done, if it's done right, it could be done very accurately. So that means that through the process and through the AI that sits in the background that we developed like 15 years ago, it's possible to predict sales volume and revenue at precise price points. Take the guesswork out of pricing.
That is awesome. So when you say everything that goes on in the business, could you break that down just a little bit to say, because what comes to mind for me is how quality the product is.
Mhm.
It comes to mind with customer service and how the product is delivered initially, and then how customer service comes after that product delivery. And those are a few things that pop to mind. But when you say everything, how do you quantify that?
Well, everything in this means that different customer categories or customer personas, or some people call them avatars, will have a different willingness to pay, and they will have a different willingness to buy. And if you can, through this research, define which customer category slash, avatar slash persona would lead to the highest sales volume and the highest revenue, you know where to target. That's
Yeah.
one piece, right? The other piece is that the same applies to features and functions and benefits of a product or a service. Some of those features, functions, and benefits have no impact on what people are willing to pay. Some have a great impact on what people are willing to pay. So those are the feature, functions, and benefit you want to use in your promotions, because it's going to lead to higher sales volume and higher revenue. And in a similar way, also marketing matters in the same way. Some marketing channels will not affect what people are willing to pay or buy. Others will. Some marketing messages will not affect what they're willing to pay and buy, but some marketing messages will, right? And the same with sales methodologies and sales channels. The same with monetization strategies. The same with obviously with the actual prices and what often can be a stratification in prices. So that's why I'm saying the pricing doesn't live in a vacuum. Everything you do in a company affects how you can price.
That's good. So that leads me to, what do you believe are the most common mistakes companies make when it comes to pricing their products or services?
Well, the biggest mistake is not to realize how important pricing is for a company's survival, right? and I'm doing something that I call the 1% challenge, right? And let me talk through this, and you're going to see why I'm saying this, right? Any company have a resulting profit that comes from only three variables. It is the total cost of the operation. It is the total sales volume of whatever the company is selling. And it's the price of what it is selling, right? So if we do a thought experiment and we say, let's change one of these or all these three variables 1% and see what happened to profits, right? And profits are good, right? Without profits, eventually there is no company. Eventually, investors, and that may be yourself if you have your own company, will get tired of funding the company or run out of money, right? So profits are essential. So if we do this thought experiment, right? And I'm talking about the average company. Now, no company is average. This is a calculation you need to do for every company. But for the average company, if if you're able to increase your sales volume with 1% profit goes up 3.5%. If you're able to decrease your cost with 1%, profit goes up 5.5%. But if you're able to increase your price or decrease your discounting, which is the same thing, right? Profit goes up 11.3%.
How does it do that? How does it jump so exponentially?
Because it's top line, you know? If you increase sales, also cost goes up, right?
Yep.
If you reduce costs, as long as you're profitable, it is from a smaller number than the top line price.
Yeah.
And the particulars with the challenge is as follows. Have you ever failed to change anything 1 single percent?
Me
Probably not.
personally, absolutely. Well, I think 1%, I think that there's a lot of micro happenings. Like if we don't stick to our diet just by 1% over time, that can lead to a poorer physique or a
Yep.
poorer health. But
Mhm.
it's not recognizable until say a year or 2 years later. So that's why I was saying, yes, over time you can change by 1% without necessarily knowing it until it's possibly too late.
Yep. Yeah. But in business, you know, the 1% is not that much, right?
No, not that much. Now,
So,
I've always been considered that price is only an issue in the absence of value. What would you have to say to that?
oh, price is actually the most powerful message of value and benefit by itself, right? And that means that if companies are coming out underpriced, they will see a lower sales volume than if they would be higher priced. And that is because the psychology of pricing, which tells us that if you're being presented with something that you want to kind of want to buy, but the price is too low, your internal thinking is that I want to buy this, but at this price, it can't be any good, so I won't.
Mm.
And we
Do you
all
have a
been
good
there, right?
example of that? Do you have a good example of that? Like a company that had a great product that just underpriced their product where to the point where it caused them either severe harm or even bankruptcy.
Well, I have from our customers, I have that information, right? And just to give you an example, this SaaS company, right? They fairly small company, new startup. I think they only had revenues of roughly a million or something like that, maybe two. And we found through that research I talked about early on that they could quadruple their prices, right? They were so underpriced. And so they did that, not overnight, but over about a 9-month period, right? And as I followed up with the CEO of the company, he said two things happened. First, our sales volume went up with 25%. This is at 4 times the price, right? Secondly, he said, and we got rid of the bottom feeders. And we
Mm.
now have a more professional level of customers. So our customer support cost have gone down with 80%.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Those are big numbers.
Yeah, those are big numbers. Let me tell you, going back to this, that everything matters when it comes to pricing. Let me give you another example. This company that they sell, they have these dispensers for purified water that you'll find outside grocery stores and places like that. And they came to us and said, we tried to increase our prices 7 years ago and it backfired badly, right? Um, so we had to pull back, okay? But now we really need to increase prices. And what the research found was that if they change how they position themselves, there was plenty of room to increase prices. Now, marketing for these kind of companies are really the signage on the actual dispensers themselves, right? So they changed the signage on the dispensers and they increased the the prices, and in 1 week, they went from a $200 to a $240 million company.
Holy cow! In 1 week?
Yeah, because everything matters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just by changing how you position the company in its competitive landscape.
That is amazing, because companies that size don't usually see that big of a gain in a year, let alone 1
That's
week.
right. That's right.
That's incredible.
About a month ago, we completed the second project for the same company, and they are now 300 million.
That's amazing. That's the price whisperer at work, everybody.
That is
Oh.
priceless work.
So can you?
But you asked me about the mistakes, and I didn't answer because I got into this 1% piece, right? And the biggest mistakes companies do when it comes to pricing is not realize how important it is, right? And that the guessing, using looking at a competitor, or if you can't, trying to find a competitor's prices, doing something like cost plus, or some other very simplistic pricing strategy, always leave money on the table, always. And what does that mean? Well, it means that those companies are not rightfully earning the profits that they should earn. They're missing out because they may have spent millions on product development, and then pricing becomes a conversation in the boardroom that takes 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
For the variable that affects profitability the most, right? So,
well, in these companies, it's so important to have a profit, because you're not talking about, in these instances you've given us so far, you're not talking about Fortune 500 companies. You're talking small to mid-sized companies that are providing incomes to middle class to upper middle class folks, and getting the pricing right allows them to stay in business, allows them to drive a profit so that they can continue to hire, so they can continue to evolve their business and continue to pay those payrolls, so that those people that are employed there can provide for their families. And that's a lot what a lot of say employees or the general public don't get about a business in general, is that the business has to survive so that they can pay their employees, to pay those employees can then live the lifestyle that they've been accustomed to living, so they can send their kids to school, so they can do all these things lifestyle wise. And so the business has to get it right.
yeah.
And
Oh, absolutely.
it's a really important task. So can you explain, I think this leads us or segues us pretty well, the concept of willingness to pay and how businesses can accurately determine this for the customers?
Well, there is willingness to pay is, I mean, we all have a willingness to pay for whatever we are buying, right? And that willingness to pay is influenced by a lot of different things. It's influenced by the marketing that we are being exposed to. I read somewhere that the average American is exposed to something like 8,000 or 9,000 marketing messages per day, right? So it's influenced by the marketing. It's influenced by our prior experience. It is influenced what we hear from friends and family and so forth. So our buying decision is gathered from a whole slew of different inputs, right? And we make a selection of which of these that we decide to use, and then we use them as references. That's how it works. And this is something that happens in the blink of an eye, right? And we're not aware of it because it happens in the limbic system. So, and it makes an emotional decision. Even in B2B, it's an emotional decision.
Yeah.
So the one thing that is important here is, and I mentioned this, that price can be so low people don't buy. Price can obviously be so high that people don't buy. And this could be accurately predicted in the kind of pricing research we do in my company. But if you're a startup, an entrepreneur with a great idea, and maybe a product down the road or a service down the road, there is a way you can actually find out, right? And the way you do this is that first you need to find at least 25 potential buyers. If it's B2B, maybe you find them in, reaching out to a couple of hundred people on LinkedIn. If it is B2C, maybe you can just go to, your local Starbucks and say, can I ask you a couple of questions, right? And, and the questions that you ask, and phraseology here is very important. You describe the product or the service as accurately as you can, and the particular value that it brings to the buyer. And then you have the two questions, which is, at which price for this product or service is it so low you think that we are going to overpromise and underdeliver, that the quality will not be good, and for that reason you are not going to buy it, right? And then you say, and now let's look at the flip side. If the product is better than you can imagine, that we are going to underpromise and overdeliver, it's going to give you more value than you can think of, what is still a price that is too high that you won't buy it, right? Now, when you have talked to 25 or more people with this, right? You can take the average of the two questions, right? And suddenly you have your price range, not below that price and not about that price. And then, of course, you want to set your price close to the top end, because that's going to be more profitable, right?
Yeah.
And
what do you feel? Sorry, finish that thought.
Those 25 people should not be current customers. They should not be current prospects. They should certainly not be friends and family, right? They need to be new potential customers. And if the company have hard time finding those 25, then the company have bigger problems than pricing, right?
Yeah, for sure. What do you feel about the good, better, best pricing methodology?
Any company should always have good, better, best. And the reason is this, that every purchase decision that we make are made in context and with references. And I alluded to that already. And if you have a good, better, best, the good is going to be too cheap for many people, right? They're going to have that feeling that this is so cheap, it can't be any good, right? The best is going to be too expensive for some people for the same reason. It doesn't matter how good it is. This is just too expensive, right? So customers will then migrate to the middle option, right? Mm-hmm. There will be some people have a buying habit of always buying the cheapest. Some people have a buying habit of always buying the most expensive. But for the most, they will gather in the middle. Now, there's more to this. We said good, better, best, and that's how it is typically presented to a potential customer, right? Whether it's in the price list, whether it's in a menu, whether it's on a website or whatever, right? It should not be presented good, better, best. It should be presented best, better, good, right? And the reason is that as we read these numbers, as humans, we cannot not compare, right? So when we read a high price, that sets an anchor, right? Which means that the consequent prices that we read would appear more affordable than it kind of really is, right?
Yeah.
So it will
Yep.
increase your sales volume, right?
No, that
And,
makes sense.
and this is something called price anchoring. And I'll tell you the most brilliant way of price anchoring I've seen was when Apple came out with a watch. So they had this, they introduced the Apple Watch at $349, right? But then they had a version of the same watch, same electronics, in a golden case for 17,000, right? And of course,
Mhm.
first of all, every journalist that wrote about this launch of the Apple Watch talked about the audacity of Apple to sell the same electronics for 349 or 17,000. And of course, those that were interested in this particular product, they read all these reviews, right? And in their minds, there were 17,349, 17,349. And that 349 became more and more and more and more and more affordable, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't think
that's
they
really good.
sold many $17,000 watches, right?
I
They
don't know
probably sold
anyone
a
with
few.
one.
I'm sorry?
I don't know anyone with one or that bought one.
Neither do I. And they took it off the website as soon as the the product was launched, right? Or a couple of weeks after.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually genius in that respect. Now, actually kind of a follow-up to that. I've heard that there's a methodology about where you price the better. If that's closer to the bottom, people psychologically gravitate towards the good versus the best.
Mhm.
Whereas if you close that pricer to the best, they kind of psychologically see the best as a value.
Yes, absolutely.
Is-
So
Okay.
you should. I mean, there's no real rule of thumb, but typically you want to have that middle choice about 2/3 the way to the best, right? So so the jump to the best is not so, the difference is not so much,
So
right?
broad. Yep. That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So let's switch gears.
Hmm.
There's a lot of buzz about AI right now.
Hmm.
And so, how has the rise of big data or big data and AI changed the landscape of pricing strategy, in your opinion?
Um, well, there's a lot of people who believe. I mean, first of all, if you look at large companies with many transactions, they typically use something called pricing software. And pricing software sits there to support the pricing process, and it also sits there to actually set prices. And those software solutions typically have some form of AI built into them, right? So, and what AI is trying to do then is to predict sales volume at different prices, right? So I mean, this has been in the market for 10 years, right? Already.
Yep.
So, and that is to take large volumes of sales data and analyze how, because that's what AI is good at. um, Take large volume and data and come up with some kind of answer, right? In this case, the answer would possibly be a new price. But there is a significant flaw with all of this. And analyzing sales data only applies to those that are already customers, right? You should obviously sort of talk to your customers, but and it's always easier to sell again to a customer. But the growth is going to come from those who didn't buy,
Yep. The new
right?
customers.
Yeah, most of the growth is going to come from new customers. And just having that conversation with customers, you end up being like in an echo chamber. Can I give you an example?
Yeah, please.
So this company, they do they make small batches of drugs for clinical trials. And the company is Metric for some reason. They're based in the Research Triangle there on the East Coast, but they did batches of 2,000 liters of these drugs. And how you make these drugs is almost like brewing beer, kind of with lots of stuff in a big steel canister, right? And they said to us that the optimum size of these batches are 2,000 liters. And then they said, and we ask our customers all the time, and they say they want 2,000 liters, right? So here's the problem. They went to market with a strong message of the benefit of 2,000 liters. A portion of the market accepted that, and they became customers, right? And then you ask them, what do they want in terms of batch size? And they all said 2,000 liters, right? Now, the research that went out to the entire market found that there was only about a quarter of the market that actually wanted 2,000 liters. The other three quarters wanted 500 liters, 1,000 liters, 5,000 liters, right? So they had limited their own growth prospects, right, by solely focusing on listening to the customers, not listening to the market.
Yeah.
Something that a lot of companies do wrong, you know.
Yep. So I'm thinking through, right? So in manufacturing or a product like the Apple you used before, they knew how much it cost them to make or manufacture that product. And then they had to figure out what their pricing strategy was going to be on top of that for profit margin. I'm thinking through a service-based business, say coaching like me, or a CPA firm, or someone that's providing advice that's essentially pricing their time. How do you go about helping them understand or quantify what their time is worth and how to go to market?
It's all about understanding the perception of value in the buyer's mind, right? Because there is, I mean, you shouldn't use cost of goods sold ever for pricing, more than making sure that you don't sell below cost, unless you do so for a strategic reason. But when it comes to coaching and so forth, it is how you as a seller can instill value in the minds of the buyer. And we obviously do that by different ways. I mean, we differentiate ourselves in ways. We focus our energy on certain. I mean, we did a project for this guy who one-man band, right? And he said, I'm doing health coaching to wealthy executives, right? But I only want to deal with men for reasons that I don't understand. But he said, I only want to deal with men. But when the data came back in this pricing research we did, females they had a willingness to buy that was twice that of men, and a willingness to pay that was twice that of men, right? So he's got a reasonably good business, but just by limiting himself to what he is comfortable doing, he shot himself in the foot, right?
Yeah.
But it's all about how delivering that perception of value is darn hard. But obviously it comes from how you present yourself, what messages you're using, how you plant references in the mind of the customer. And that may sound like manipulation, and it is, but it's manipulation in a good way, right?
Yeah, manipulation. That's the thing, is manipulation can be used for good.
Absolutely.
It can be used for bad. And that's what, it gets the word gets used, I think, mostly in a negative sense.
Yep.
But you're absolutely right. Manipulation can be used for good.
Yeah, absolutely. And you back into what you said a few moments ago, that profits are good because it make companies stay alive, right? To pay their people so they can live their life take their kids to school and so forth, right? But it's also any company delivers some value to the buyers.
Yes.
If you deliver no value, they won't buy. And they certainly won't buy again, right?
Correct. Correct.
And so we are all in business to deliver value of some sort to the buyers that becomes our buyer.
Yep. We got about 10 minutes left. I want to extract as much from your big brain as possible. I know that you have a great book. So I want you to introduce that. But the other part of this question would be, are there any other books or resources that you would recommend for those looking to deepen their understanding on pricing strategies?
Well, the book is this one. It's called The Price Whisper. I adopted that moniker many years ago because I got this wacky name, right? and the subtitle is a lot more interesting and important than the actual title. And the subtitle is an holistic approach to pricing power. And pricing power was coined by Warren Buffett in 2008. He was interviewed by the FCC in relation to the then recession, and what he said was that pricing power is the most important criterion for invest in a business or not. And then he continues saying that pricing power is the ability to increase prices without losing sales volume, right? And then he said even more. He said, if if you have to say a prayer before you increase prices, you're not in a good business. So that's the most important thing. I've read many of these pricing books. They're not that many because honestly, we're not that many people who work with pricing, certainly not in the way that I do. And I find many of them they're often either written by academia or by career consultants, not by business people, right? So yeah, there are always nuggets in any book, right, of value, but much of it is not really applicable to a small and mid-sized business, right? And they often talk about including how shall I say, is more about processes to make sure that your salespeople deliver the price and have the right price list and so forth. It's not about what people are actually willing to pay, which matters the most.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So now, having said that, there are, I think there's some very interesting books about the decision making, because at the end of the day, understanding how people make the buying decision is really important, right? And there is an academic field called behavioral economics, and there's 3 Nobel Prize winners, and we're standing on those shoulders, right? First one is called Herman Singer. The second one is Kahneman. What is his first name? His last name is Kahneman anyway, and then it's Dick Thaler, right? Those have written books about how you make decisions, and they've advanced the whole science of understanding how we make purchase decisions. There's one more guy called Don Ariely who hasn't got the Nobel Prize yet, but it's very, very he writes very, very well about this subject. And then there are other books like I can't remember the author, but like Start with a Why, for example. It's
Yeah,
an
that
old
was
book.
Simon Sinek.
Yeah, Simon Sinek, very, very important book, right?
Yeah, I've gotten to
Um,
hear him speak a couple times, and he's incredible. And great TED Talk you can listen to for a short version of that book if you want to dig into it.
okay, yeah. Well, I read the book, so
No, I
um,
meant for anyone listening, not you,
oh
Per.
yeah. um, somebody else that is that is not so much about decision making, but I think is very important for how a company, because again, going back to everything matters how you price, right? Now that means that the company needs to be on the same page, right? And the company needs to be, the vision of the company needs to be understood and sort of delivered at any level in the company. And the best way I've understood this is to use something called OKRs, right? Which are, the leadership sets a vision, the why, right? And then the whole organization figures out in the various levels on how to deliver on that vision. And so it's not KPIs, which are top down, which people don't care about very much. But it's these OKRs. And there's a great book by a guy called John Doerr, a famed venture capitalist, about these OKRs. And the book is called Measure What Matters.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It's a great book. It's a really great book. And can help companies a lot. And he says that it typically takes a year to figure out what to measure. Because it's
Yeah,
hard.
great example that I use in my EOS coaching is if you, the owner operator, are on an island and you have no access to internet, you can't phone back to your business, but you have this lovely cabana boy or cabana girl that's going to bring you your Mai Tai and a napkin. And on that napkin is all the information you'd need, whether you call them KPIs, OKRs, or anything else. What needs to be on that napkin for you to know, have a pulse on what's going on in your business? Because remember, you can't phone home and you have no access to internet. So what are the key metrics that need to be on that napkin? And that's kind of the analogy I draw out in their head so
Yeah.
that they can start to picture what are the key things that I absolutely need to know if I'm on this deserted island and have no access to phone home or check the internet.
Depends on how long you are on the island, I think.
Yeah. Well, we shoot for weekly metrics because that seems to be a good pulse for most business owners to understand what's going on in the
Yeah.
business. That's the
Cool.
analogy we like to draw. All
No,
right.
I love that. I mean, seen many business plans written on a back of a napkin, and this is another way of really narrowing down what's important.
That's right. And we got to focus on what's most important. So,
Yep.
last question before I get to my ending one. If you could give one piece of advice to a business struggling with their pricing strategy, what would that one piece of advice be?
Increase prices. If it
Why?
doesn't work, you can always go back. If it does
Mm.
work, then you make more money, right? And
And so let's say I have a fear pair. So we're all gonna always gonna have that negative self-talk. We always got what if it doesn't work? Well, then you just said, well, you can always go back. But I'm just thinking through that psychologically for that business owner because they're gonna struggle with that. You say to go ahead and try it because you can always go back.
Mhm. And you don't have to increase prices for all your customers, right? Depending what your business is, but you may elect to increase prices to, I don't know, to whatever customer comes in on Thursday, right?
Or new customers and leave
Yeah,
existing customers at the same.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And and
Yeah.
and but then also new customers, you don't have to give the new price to all the customers, right? Like I said, you whoever buys on Thursday get a newer price, and you see, is your sales volume the same this Thursday as last Thursday,
Mm,
right? Or did it go up or down? And maybe it went down a little bit, but your margin went up.
that's good. That's good. I always end with this question. and I didn't prep you for it. So, well, I'm very curious to see your response or hear your response. What's an unpopular belief that you hold to be true that you think most others disagree with you on?
Oh, unpopular belief.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be anything related to pricing. It could be
No, I understand that. I'm
political
just
or
trying to
anything.
understand your question. What is an unpopular belief that I think is true? Unpopular belief. I can do popular belief, but unpopular belief is
A hill
this is
you'd
very
die
hard.
on that you think most would disagree with you.
I think that if we do pricing, I think that uh, the unpopular belief is that that it really the popular belief is that pricing doesn't matter, and I disagree, right?
Mm.
And that because um yeah, I mean that's a very hard question.
Yeah. I always try to get to people's core with that one because you get answers across the board. So it could be sometimes political, sometimes leadership, sometimes the topic we were just talking
Yeah.
about. So that's why I like ending with it. So where can people follow you, reach out to you? Should they have questions? What's the best forms for people to follow you and
If you
reach out?
if you Google the Price Whisper, you will get about 10 million hits.
Okay.
You will find my writing, my book, my YouTube channel. I also got a TikTok channel. And I'm writing in Forbes, and you'll find lots of articles. So so that's really the best way. Google the
That's
Price
awesome.
Whisper, if nothing else, because my wacky name is wacky. So
I think Per is pretty good. It's the last name, the chauffeur, that will trip people up because of the Swedish spelling here in
that's
America, but
right.
that's okay.
Yeah.
They'll get it now. They're hearing, not seeing, so they just know. They're
Yeah.
just going to spell it with a CH instead of a SJ. But no, this has been really insightful. I really appreciate your time, my friend. This, like
Thank
I
you so
said, this
much.
is not a topic that we've covered before, and we have so many entrepreneurs and leaders that listen to this show, so I know they'll get value out of this. So Spartans, as always, remember that good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.
This is Sparta!